in between the Risk Hotel and the theater was this little cleaners. Just a Woody's Cleaners.
Uh-huh.
And there was a theater. And they finally tore that Aristocrat Hotel down. And that place was one of them Circle K's. It's still there.
Okay.
And across the street from that was Victory Motors. Then across the alley from the theater was the Texaco. It belonged to Jim Munger. My good buddy Danny Kowchak run it across the street. On the other corner, going south, would have been the Standard Film Station.
Okay.
And then going east would have been, what the hell was his name? Brownie's Cafe. Open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Okay.
And the next to that was Toby's gas station, 35 cents a gallon.
Wow.
And then, of course, the Cosmograph.
Mm-hmm.
That was quite a place. Everybody stayed there. Everybody.
Really?
Then, like I say, Victory Motors, and the next place to that was a big cleaners. They done sheets and everything for everybody.
Okay.
Boy, when something comes more that, I just fall apart, don't it?
It's all right.
I'm sorry.
Oh, that's no problem at all.
Let's see. And the Texaco, and you turn and go that way, Betty's shop.
Oh.
So women's clothes, Golden Rule. Oh God! Then right in there. Then they had a place called Blue Goose. I was in there when I was a kid. It's a pool hall, and they played poker back there.
Okay.
It was old. Now something happened to it. And they had Bolly's store. That's where you go in there and get them little wax things. Had juice in them a ton, and she traded funny books. And then go on down. There was a liquor store. And what was his name? What was that guy? Joe was his first name. Had a bowling alley. 3 lanes, 2 lanes, and the ball was that big, and I set pins back there. You had to pick them up one at a time.
Right.
But I tell you, some of them guys that would bowl, there was one guy, God damn, he told him bowled hard. He had to really stay out of the road.
Yeah.
Then on down from there was Hal Jones' shoe shop, Ivory's saddle shop. And before that was a Safeway. My wife told me what that was, and I can't remember. But it was the old Safeway for years and years and years. Old Leonard Robinson run that place. And across the street where that church is, it's always been there. No, it was down here where the bank is, and they moved it over there.
Okay.
And Reverend Bass lived right next door to it. They had a house for him. Little short guy.
Okay.
I was baptized in that church when it was a Baptist church at that time.
Okay.
I was baptized there. And let's see. Oh, there was all kinds of places. Go on up the street, clear up the street to the old high school. My. Memories there.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you remember about school?
School? That was a 2-story high school, had everything in it, and it was built with the purpose of a 3rd floor on it, and they waited too long.
Okay.
And then finally, after graduated in '53, it went along, and finally, you know how people are, they can't stand history, so they tore most of it down. They left the gym and the music room. That's all they left.
Okay.
And we played football there, they had still got that.
Mhm.
But when we started playing football, we played football at the fairgrounds.
Right.
Yep.
We heard that the locker rooms for football were here, and you'd have to run to the fairgrounds.
No,
No?
when I went to school, I was up to high school.
Oh,
Middle school.
Okay.
This might have been before my time.
Okay.
But this place got, oh, more memory than you can shake a stick at.
The armory?
Like I say, when they was dancing up there
Uh-huh.
and got a good tune going,
Uh-huh.
you could see that floor move that much.
Oh, my goodness. Wow.
And then we went that way, of course. We was talking about that the other day. All kinds of clothing store in this town. Farrell's Clothing, Golden Rule, God, you get pennies,
Mhm.
every place. Now what you got? You can't even buy a pair of shoes in this town.
Mhm.
Had Cashway. Way long before that was Cashway, that was Two Brothers Trucking Company.
Two Brothers Trucking.
God, yes. And my brother worked for Solitaire Foods,
Mhm.
which would be on the street where sandwiches is. It went clear down and it was right next to railroad tracks. All the groceries come in on the railroad.
Mhm.
Then they'd unload them. They had a basement. Unload all them groceries in there. And then they'd load their trucks up and deliver them all over town.
Mhm.
They went everywhere. Everywhere, them groceries. And then, what did they have down there? No, it wasn't the jail. The next street over, the old town hall's still there. That little building, it's not very big. We lived in that great big building. It's a two-story house where it's a flower shop now, I think.
Mhm.
And then we lived down on the corner at Mr. Gibson's house, which he was a judge at one time. Didn't want to go for him because he was tough. If you got up in front of him, he was going to get in trouble.
Mhm.
And my wife can remember across the street what was there before that bank was, and I can't.
Mhm. Okay.
She knows just about as much as I do. More than I do.
Uh-huh.
Always did. Let's see. Over on the corner was a liquor store, Woody's Liquor Store. Oh, Bingo's Liquor was right next to the theater.
Bingo's Liquor.
Yeah, a little short guy around it.
Okay.
Bingo's Liquor. Across the store was Woody's Liquor Store. That was quite a place. And Greeley Gas was right in there be going west. Greeley Gas had their offices there.
Mhm.
And right on the corner between Pop, there was an alley. And my mother used to run a little bitty cafe there. Get the best meals in the world there.
What was it called?
Hmm?
What was it called?
It's Mom's Cafe.
Mom's Cafe.
And you see, went down on the corner where the Poplar is now used to be. But on the corner used to be Ferguson's Garage. I forgot what kind of cars they sold. In between there was something, I can't remember what it was. But across the street where that big building is,
Mhm.
that used to be where old Harry Hansen had his filling station.
Okay.
It was dirt. And I used to play marbles there. Old Harry he was a big old heavy guy. They didn't have the old pumps. But they filled up. Thing filled up, but you didn't have to pump it up.
Oh,
Like
okay.
they used to do. He was quite a guy. And then that all got tore down, and a guy named Cusey built that place. It was a pool hall.
Mhm.
Used to have dances in there after becoming the Elks Club.
Okay.
And you could see that floor move too, I mean to tell you. And then they sold out, made it the Elks Club.
Mhm.
Across the street was Pleasance Insurance Company.
Mhm.
And next Next to that was Brinkley Hardware. Next to that was the old theater. That's the place they acquitted Queen Anne.
Oh.
They put her on trial for stealing and killing cattle,
Wow.
and they acquitted her. But she did do what she did, but they still acquitted her.
Wow.
And then next door to that was Easley Cafe, and another pool hall. Little bitty fella run that, Bill something. He had good bowling alleys. He had two. They had good bowling alleys. You used to put the pins in, but you could put them down and rack them.
Mhm.
And a guy named Buzz, he throw that goddamn ball so hard. And they'd play pool in there. A guy named Barnes, which is a big wheat farmer, and another guy, what the hell was his name? He was a big wheat farmer, and this Buzz, he knew a good pool player. I mean, the money he got in the middle of that table, like you wouldn't believe. Barnes, and out where the power plant is, used to be all the wheat fields.
Right.
We called it Two Rocks before the power plant was there, because there's two big old rocks, sandstone rocks,
Mhm.
and two big granaries. That's where we go out and do our partying out in there. Of course, that's all gone.
Mhm.
Let's see. And after you go past the theater was that pool hall, Bill Cullen's pool hall. Then you went across the alley. Was there an alley in there? No. And then the bus station was right on the corner, Greyhound bus. And then the old courthouse. And the sheriff at that time lived in the basement.
Was the courthouse?
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
We had the sheriff lived in the basement. We had Oliver Hoy was one cop. For a long time there was just one.
Wow.
And then there was two. Let's see, across the street from the courthouse was the Chevrolet company run by, I don't remember the guy. Had a Chevrolet dealership there. In Horton's filling station, of course, it's still there. But see who owns that. Smith. John Smith owns that place. He's the one that took and done all that cement work. It's just his place. It's his hideaway, what you might call. But at one time it was a big truck stop. And they had a pit. When the guy'd come in wanting his truck service, you drive over that pit and they could get down in there and you could do all your service work on it down that pit. Horton's was there forever. Harris run it at one time, and then I can't remember that other guy's name. God. Then you go Greenhall on that Chevy garage. This on the other hand was a guy named Gerhardt, had the Dodge place. That's where my brother worked for years. Let's see. And of course, way on up there was Lettro's, where the big barn was. You know, before Lettro owned that barn, that belonged to a guy named J.W. Rose, a little feller. And he farmed. You'd be going north, on both sides of the creek, he farmed. Made all kinds of vegetables. God, everything, I guess. They tried to keep his old cabin going where he lived, and it fell apart, and they tried to make a new one. That didn't go. But down there in the park, I was down there one day, and I noticed it's one of them old-time log sheds. And there's a guy lived there. I went over there and talked to him. Said, God, this old thing has been here forever. I got to asking around. That was one of J.W. Rose's rentals.
Oh.
He built them cabins and then he'd rent them. And that's the only one I know's left in this town, but it's still there. I'll be damned. Then on the other end of town across the street was a motel. what was that guy? Motel. And there's pictures around, I think you could probably find them in this place. That's where the hunters love to come. And showed pictures of out there on the lawn. They strung a thing across there. Some of the biggest damn bucks you ever seen in your life.
Wow.
Oh, back in them days when you'd kill a buck, he was a big one. You don't see them much anymore like that. Big ones. Dressers Motel, yeah. And of course, across the street from that was the Honeysuckle Motel. It's been there forever, going north. And then you go on out with old Howard. He had a glass shop. Not a glass shop, but windshield shop and a gas station. Howard. He was there for years. And he drank like a fish. You could always tell because his nose beat red constantly. But he was a good guy. Even when he was half drunk, he knew what he was doing. He was just a hell of a guy. And then on past his place was this guy made a restaurant. He was German. He made a restaurant out of it. And he advertised pan-fried steak. You ever hear that?
Mm-hmm.
What was his name? He was a machinist at heart. Because I worked for Stanton, which was right next to the old railroad, what do you want to call it? Where the train come in.
Oh, the old train
Depot.
station? Depot.
Excuse me. Right where was Stanton Transportation. God, they'd been there forever. And I went to work for them when I was just a goddamn kid. What that guy told me, he said, if you can take this truck out and go to the rig with this load of pipe and get it back without tearing it up, it's your truck. So I did. It was owned by a Walt. God. He was drunk all the time, too. But he had a good trucking outfit. But this was before him, after him. But you go down, you go that way? You know anything about that country? There's a turn down there, they used to call it Blue Mountain. And in them days, Razor was just booming. That's where we done all the trucking business down there. Because God, they're just drilling well after well down there. And instead of having to go clear to Artesia and down, which was a long way around, this guy that owned his trucking company built that road down to Rangeley to save time.
Okay.
Because you could work 24 hours a day down there when they were just, oh God, that place was booming. And Rangeley's just a little wide spot in the road then, you know.
Mm-hmm.
When I went down there, the streets were still gravel.
Mm-hmm.
You know? Well, when I was a kid, the streets in Craig was gravel. All over, anywhere you wanted to go. Let's see. You're going towards the depot. Of course, there's the old White Horse. It's always been there. And then one time, Yampa Valley Electric was there on the corner. And across the street, Greeley Gas built a new place. Then you went on down the street, and there was a big 2-story hotel where all the guys that worked for the railroad stayed 90% of the time when they come down. That was in between the railroad, in between Stanton's and the railroad tracks. And a guy named Herschel Deakins was the manager of that depot for years and years.
Mm-hmm.
I can remember when everything come in on the train and everything went out on the train. Pipe, groceries. They brought the wool in them great big old sacks, big as this table, and stacked it right next to the tracks. Just tons of it. And they tarp it. And us kids would go down there and play in them tarp. come home smelling like sheep, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Then there was the Gilsonite docks, where the Staten outfit would go to Bonanza and pick up them sacks. God, I don't like them sacks, they're big. And they'd bring them sacks to town, put them on the dock, and then they'd put them on the railroad. That was before they had the plant, the Gilsonite plant. Then they built that, and then they done it all there in the plant. Of course, it's gone. And there was a trucking outfit run around the clock hauling Gilsonite out of Bonanza. But before that, them sacks, I can tell you, they must have weighed 300 pounds.
Wow.
And they told me about them mines down there in Bonanza. My God, they're just holes straight down, and then they'd mine off from there. Whew. Couldn't get me down there. Oh, let's see. What else would you like to know that I could remember?
Well, what did you do after high school?
Let's see. First thing I done is get married. And then we went to work on, me and the wife moved to Black Mountain on Vic Smith's sawmill on the backside of Black Mountain. Up there, and we lived up there all summer. And then Mom got pregnant. We moved back to Craig. I went to work for Shepherd's and Plumbing. Shepherd's Plumbing. You know, it's still there.
Mm-hmm.
But a different guy owns it. You know who, of course, I don't know whether you know. Remember Dr. God, he's around here forever. Had a clinic, or he still got a clinic. But he's gone to Denver. Doc Toll.
Okay.
Had that clinic there forever. And finally, Doc decided to close his business down and move to Denver and teach young people what he knows. And that's what he's doing. But his son bought that Shepherd's and Plumbing out. You know where that is, don't you? Shepherd's son?
Roughly.
I see. Yes, that way. Right next to Shepherd's and Plumbing used to be a goddamn place where you come in your horse and buggy. It was a place where you put your horse and buggy up. I don't ever remember the name of it, but that's what they used to use it for in the old days.
Okay.
Clear off over where I live, clear over on that side of the town, there's a house that's on the corner. It's got a steeple in one corner of it. And I finally found out it used to be a mortuary.
Oh.
And there's a little brick building right next to it. That's where they used to keep the hearse. And I didn't know that. Somebody told me that. That must have been a long time ago. Let's see. Went that way. And on the left side of the street, God, what was it here? There was a liquor store in there, the old bank. The old bank, Moffat County State Bank, was where the Bank of the West is now. And then you go on down the street, and the old VFW's been there forever. There's a pipe that runs across the creek behind the VFW. And every spring, when the water come up, well, the logs would come down and back up the water. Well, it'd back up the water and flood downtown Craig.
Wow.
A time or two. Flooded the bank out. Quite a few places then. And they had Cooney and Valley had a drag line. They'd go down there every spring. One of them drag lines with the cable, and they'd throw the bucket out, and they kept the logs out of there so it wouldn't flood. Finally, they decided they'd cut that piece of pipe out of there so it wouldn't flood Craig anymore. And I do remember, just barely, Texaco Refinery, clear out where Cowcheck's got their new building. That used to be refinery there, Texaco. Texaco Refinery. My uncle worked there. And finally, you know, there was a lot of oil around here. Finally, the oil ran out. They moved that thing lock, stock, and barrel to Casper and wore it out. And then shut it down. But boy, that put a lot of people to work. And then if you go on out west, there's a big house that sits on the right-hand side.
Mm-hmm.
There's a body shop, and then a street. And that big house that sits there on the left, that used to be where the superintendent lived.
Wow.
Then you go on down that street that way and turn right. There's about 4 brick houses. That's where the bosses lived. Not the superintendent and any people in them. They all lived in them brick houses. About 4 of them in there.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing disappeared. And of course, what's down there now is there's still an outfit down there that works on drag line buckets and all kinds of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Forbes. This guy Forbes, I don't know what all he does. He works on just about everything. And the old trailer park. Of course, back when I was a kid, all that wasn't here.
Right.
God, I guess there wasn't nothing here. We had a skating rink. Down you go down this street where the guy's got his tree shop place. You know how that is.
Uh-huh.
Well, you turn left. The guy on the corner was named Alvy Glassburn. He lived on the corner, and right across the street was a skating rink.
Oh, that's not too far.
Yeah, it's like where I keeps all these trees.
Mm-hmm.
They'd flood that. That's where we skated.
Oh.
There, and then they had one down at the park on this end.
Mm-hmm.
They'd flood that. That was a good skating rink.
That's where we saw a lot of other trees.
Yeah. And then, when we run out of something to do, the kick was froze over, we could skate plumb to the river and back. We'd build fires all the way down and get warm. We skated that river lots. And then, out this way, past Howard Hagerman's place on the right, had a dam there. That's where they started the ditch.
Mm-hmm.
They ditched that water all the way around over there. And there was a guy and his wife, Cully Walsh, and her husband. Here, take the best alfalfa you ever seen. That old ditch, I used to swim in that ditch. It's still there, part of that ditch. That ditch, they ditched that water, so on this end of town, there's a lot of alfalfa fields on both sides.
Mm-hmm.
2 brothers. What the hell is it, 2 brothers? They're gone now. But they had alfalfa. But this on the right-hand side, old Cully Walsh and her husband had that for years. There wasn't nothing out there except alfalfa fields. Clear on out, you know. And on this end of town, what was out there? Nothing. There was a guy named Joe. He had a shop out there. And he was talking to me one time. I loved to visit with Joe. I'll think of his name in a minute. But he had a shop out there, and there's what they call greasewood. You ever hear of it? God, it looked like sagebrush, and it grew tall. And he had a whole bunch of it out there. And Joe told somebody one day, he said, I'm gonna tear all that down, dig it up. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna plant either oats or wheat in there and make it grow. They told him he was crazy. So Joe had one of them old-time caps. Mm-hmm. He got out, he plowed that all up. A year and a half later, he had wheat. And, let's see, down where the city market is now, used to be a corral. That was back when Great Divide was booming.
Okay.
He would take and rough in teams of horses, and then the people that was by Great Divide would take the teams. He'd just rough them in, and then after that, it was their problem, you know, to tame them down with. He said, I made money hand over fist selling them teams of horses to people and roughing them in. And then
where would he get his horses from? Where would he get the horses
he
from?
never did tell that part. But up by my house there's no gravel pit up there. And what he was doing up there, I'll never know. Probably scraping gravel. But he had 4 head of horses. As the way Joe said, it has kind of what you call bronchi. In the winter time, he was wanting to scrape gravel. So I'll be goddamn if they didn't run off with him. There's quite a little snow on the ground. And he said, I wasn't going to let go of him. When he finally stopped, he was right in the middle of the street back down here where the stoplight is. Here come the... Joe Edwards was his name. Joe Edwards. You remember, hear that name? Joe Edwards?
I haven't heard that.
Yeah, that's him. Hell of a guy.
Mm-hmm.
He had a crew that put in the first gas lines in Craig for the houses.
Okay.
And he had a good crew. He could line them out and go off and do something else, like with the horses. They put in the gas lines all over Craig.
Okay.
And he said, well, I made good money doing that, too.
Mm-hmm.
That's when gas first come into Craig from out, let's see, not Morappis. Go through Hamilton, and then there's Morappis Road, and then there's another road that went clear out to a big gas field. I think that's where the gas come in from Craig. I'm not sure. But he made a lot of money doing that. Joe Edwards, he was a hell of a guy. He had a filling station and roofing business. Oh, God. Finally, old Joe just got old. But he could sure tell some good stories. My mother could tell some good stories when she married my dad. He was a cowboy, of course. They went to work for the Sevens. My dad was the foreman. And had a little Chinaman. Bobby was his name. He taught my mother how to cook. At the 2-bar. Yeah, you heard about the 2-bar.
A little bit.
Yeah, that's where it was down in the next river off down about other side of Maybell down there. Dad was the boss on that job. And then she was telling about, she cooked on the first oil well up Wilson Creek. He was a cook to feed all the roughnecks, and Dad hauled water to the rig. It was one of them old-time wooden rigs then. She could remember that. And then going back this way, before they had the stockyards here, they was up about halfway between here and Hayden, right next to railroad tracks. And there was a big old ranch right over there, and Mom and Dad went over there one time. It was a 2-story house. And she said, I never forget. They had a colored maid and a man. She said that was the most exciting thing in her life. It was a big place there. And then they moved to Craig, and the stockyard was over here where what do they call that? There's Samuelson Hardware and then the other one.
Which one?
Well, they got 2 places now.
Mm-hmm.
They got one out west, and then still got the one open down here where the granary is.
Oh, right.
But across the street from that, before it was there, that was the stockyards.
Oh, okay.
And then they had a coal tipple right next to that. And they had trucks running out of what they called Axel Basin. They had a big coal mine out there. They hauled that coal and put it there, and they processed the coal and put it on the railroad tracks there.
Mm-hmm.
And then I don't know what happened. Something happened. They tore the stockyard down because that's where they shipped all the cattle out. That was right there.
Mm-hmm.
They tore that down and moved it on down the tracks quite a ways. And passed it there for a while, and then it's gone. I don't know what happened to all that. They shipped sheep out of here. cattle out of here, everything on the railroad. Of course, I was just a kid and I remember all that stuff. The good old days, you might say. Growing up in Craig. Sure changed.
Yeah. How has it changed? How have you seen it change?
People. This road. But, you know what keeps Craig going, don't you?
What's that?
2 power plants,
Oh.
where everybody works, and 3 coal mines. That's what keeps this town going. There was a guy named Taylor. The street's named after him. He said Craig, Colorado will never be anything but a boom bust town. And I can remember Craig would boom, you know,
Right.
with the wool, the cattle, and gone. And then something else would come along, he'd boom for a little while, and he called it Craig a boom bust town. And one of these streets is named after him.
Okay.
You ever read, of course you haven't read that book about Craig. That old man, Mr. Stoddard, the first guy that started the Craig paper. I think he died, but he had all this information. And Dan and one of his other people that worked with him, they took this book and compiled it. And it's the Old West days. And if you read that book, that'll tell you more about Craig than anybody can tell you.
Okay.
Because this old man Stoddard knew it all. And that book was so good I read it twice.
Okay.
Very interesting. Tell you what Craig was all about. Then you're going on out west. Wasn't nothing out there.
Right.
Not much.
It was all wheat fields, right?
And then, it started growing this way. They had Farhard Welding Shop, Bill Nelson's trucking business. Bill Nelson had a trucking outfit, and he moved houses. He was a house mover. And he moved off, and about half of them houses to Mount Harris.
Oh.
There's a lot of them Mount Harris houses here in Craig and Hayden. And there was an old guy. This is a good story. It's in that book. Her name was Goat Mary.
Goat Mary.
Yep, she lived in Mount Harris. And Chuck Mack wrote a book about Mount Harris. Oh, boy, is it a good book, too. The best part in his book is about the old, when they outlawed booze. And they made them stills, and, they'd come in, find them, and break them. But anyway, back to Goat Mary. She wanted her house moved to Craig. Well, Bill told her so much. And Goat Mary told Bill, she says, you wouldn't take it out of trade, would you? Bill said, no, she'd give him $10. Are you sure you wouldn't take it out of trade? He'd give her another $10. Finally got up his $50 out of her, and she moved his house. But she lived on this end of town, but she would take it out trade if she could, instead of paying you. Bill said, nope, I want my $50. Then she quit talking, but she moved to Craig, and they called her Goat Mary because she had her herd of goats.
Okay.
And she lived out on the old highways here for years and years and years. But when Dad worked for the 2-bar, and they bring their cattle up, Joe Edwards remembered that. That's when they had the stockyards, like I told you, between here and Hayden. Just on the other side of that Joe said that's where they'd hold the cattle after they got them this far.
Okay.
Then the next day they'd take them on up and put them on the railroad tracks. But Joe said, I can remember that. Boy, the 2-bar run about 5,000 head of cows back then. They wintered in Browns Park and summered up towards Hans Peak a lot of times. Mom and Dad lived in Browns Park, and I finally went down there and found out where they lived. The hired hand lived on one end, and Mom and Dad lived on the other end, and they took care of the cows. And she could remember that One time the mailbox was about 5 to 10 miles, and she wanted to get the mail. And Dad told her not to ride this horse because he was a little bit spooky. So her Dad and the guys went out around the cows. She got the hired man to saddle that horse, and she went to the mailbox. She said the horse went all the way to the mailbox and then stopped. In the meantime, Dad come home and no Mom. So they went chasing her. There she come. Horse just fine. He let her ride from then on. That's changing the subject. We were talking about Craig, ain't we?
Yeah, that's fine. Well, what do you remember about the last boom when the power plant was built?
That boom, I worked out that silly place.
Okay.
There's more goddamn riffraff and cake as you could shake a stick at. Building that barns and they sold the ground to the power plant, and they made a small fortune off of that. And then I went to work out there. It took them, 2 years to build that place. But I never seen more riffraff in my life.
Wow.
This town was booming. And people made money. And I tell you, some of the people that come in here to work, well, they made money hand over fist. And I mean, tell you, they'd spend it too.
Right.
Well, like crazy, they would spend it. I worked for Stearns and Rogers. They was a thing or whatever. And then they had about 5 or 6 different companies out there, you know, that moved in to do that. They had boilermakers, iron workers, pipe fitters, welders, you name it. They was all out there. That's where all them old buildings are still out there, most of them, where each company had their place. B&W was there. It's a big company. It's quite a place. Just busy, this town of Craig. Oh boy. And when they left, Craig back to normal.
The population was still a lot larger, right?
Yeah, at one time it was 4,000. Then it come up to 5. And then it just grew little by little. Now what is that, 10? Something like that. But it wasn't a very big town when I was a kid, 4,000 people.
Okay.
There's a lot of things I can remember.
Yeah.
And I can't remember a lot of things. But there wasn't a lot on either end of town.
Yeah.
No, there wasn't. Let's see, Kmarker was on that end of town at one time. But before they was Kmarket, there was Kenny Henderson Construction Outfit, Henderson Construction. Had a big old building right there where Burdock's is now.
Oh, okay.
And they was in to a little bit of everything. Gold mining, God, you name it, they was into it. Then the old man got killed, and the son took it over. And they done worked for, like, Texaco up Wilson Creek. And then they got into the gold mining up in Hans Peak. And a bunch of my friends used to work in a big mine they had up there. Some of the stories some guys could tell. But it was I think their dad got killed in an airplane wreck. It was Bill Barrett, Henderson, and 2 other guys was in an airplane. Corky Smith used to run the wool warehouse, they called it. They was in this airplane. Somehow or other this airplane wrecked and killed all but Bill Barrett. And when they finally found him, Bill begged him to kill him. He was in that bad a shape.
Wow.
You know, they couldn't get him out. Listen, they couldn't get him out, but of course they didn't. He begged them, boy. I can tell you, that's bad.
Yeah.
He was a good guy, too. Barrett's Men's Store, oh, man, they clothing stores, Farrell's Men's Store, Barrett's Men's Store, Golden Rule, God, shoe store, they had 2 or 3 shoe stores here. Of course, J.C. Penney, that was the best place in town. Right next door to Penny's, J.C. Penney's. At one time, I just barely remember it. There's a post office. It's about as wide as here. The boxes are on one side, and that's where you got your mail.
Okay.
But before that, a friend of mine, old Emmett Pankey, said it was a place that you could go in, and for $1.50 you could get steak and taters. He said the biggest steak you ever seen eat. Said it's all you could eat for $1.50. That was a good place to eat. Then all that changed, of course, and on down the street there was Snyder was a doctor's office, and they had another place there. What was that? I forgot all that. On down the street there wasn't nothing. But across the street, of course, was Mathers. It's been there forever and ever.
Mathers Bar?
Ever and ever. Pete Mathers was the boss. He was a hell of a guy. Of course, there was about 5 of us kids run together now. And we got up where we was about 16. So we'd go in Mathers. And Pete would give us beer. We said, you go over in that corner and you stand there and you drink that beer and don't cause any trouble. And then out Signal Hill, when they got to going.
The Signal Hill restaurant?
Signal Hill, you get the best steak in town out there.
Okay.
But they had strip tease out there too. And of course us young fellas wanted to see all that too. And we knew the guy that run it. He said, you just go over there and stand in that corner and you can watch. Don't cause any trouble. But I mean, tell you, get Joe Petrini run that place. Joe Petrini and another guy. Joe's gone, but the other guy's still alive. Jim Clay. They was both owners in that place. You could get the best steak in town at that place. Then it changed hands after that. It wasn't so good. And it's still sitting out there, and I don't know why. Somebody bought it. And on that end of town, on the old highway, where the old highway went, they had a John Deere place. Alice Chalmers was up there, a John Deere place, and another outfit on that way out of town on the left. See who ran that? He's gone. Nelson Eaton had an auto shop, and there was another friend of mine. I seen him over at the restaurant a while back. He sold Alice Chalmers and a John Deere shop. The Alice Chalmers shop was up here. Yes, it was. What that guy was named. Names I can't remember, but places I can remember a lot of.
Well, just kind of to wrap up the interview, what have you seen types of changes in the last 5 years? How do you feel about Craig now?
People. Yes.
People most.
An influx of people.
Okay.
And there's people come from big cities and they want to change things. Well, you can't do that. They want to do things different. Well, most people that still live in Craig don't want to do that. Yes.
How do you feel about Craig today? Just as a...
It's all right. It's a good guy. We live up on Texas Avenue.
Oh, okay.
We lived there for 45 years.
Wow.
And when we first lived there, there wasn't nothing. Now there's East School up there.
Mm-hmm.
Back then there wasn't nothing till they built the school. That's all sagebrush back over that way. And then they built East School. That's where my kids went to school, all three of them, girls. They started there, and then they finished up in high school, the old high school.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, my oldest girl is 56. My youngest one is 52.
Okay.
And the middle one would be 54. She would have been 54. She's gone.
Mm-hmm.
One of them, the oldest one lives in Vernal, and the youngest one lives here.
Okay.
She lives out on that end of town. There wasn't a damn thing out on that end of town back then.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Finally, they did, years and years later, build a lumberyard out there, a big one.
Right.
And it lasted so long, and then now it's, I think it's a place where they park trailers still out there, isn't it?
Possibly.
Of course, they still got that low income type thing out there. You can go out there and live for $20 a month. If there's a lot of people out there, you know what a lot of people do? They'll move out there and they'll live on this $20 a month, but the husband's still got a job. Pretty tricky.
Mm-hmm.
Make a living that way. There's not much to do in this town of Craig, except power plant. You can get a job around here for $10. You're lucky. I had a guy tell me the other day, he says, my daughter got on a Kmart for the minimum wage. Wow. What is it now, $7.35 or something like that?
About that.
I seen a thing on TV where they was boycotting that minimum wage, and they wanted a minimum wage of 15.
Oh, recently?
Yeah. I wonder if they'll get that. Maybe Obama will do it.
It'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what that man's going to do to this country in the next 4 years. He's going to ruin it. He's doing a pretty good job. We're broke. I heard at one time, you know, if you start out when you're a kid and you start working at age 16 and work up till you're what? I retired at 65. You're paying in Social Security all that time. People all over the world. We should be making a whole lot of money every month. But the government said there's so much money in there, we might as well borrow it. The thing about it is they never paid it back. Huh. That's terrible, ain't it?
Mm-hmm.
So now, Social Security's, and they're not broke, but we will be, I suppose. But you make, what, between me and the wife, we get $2,300 a month. And if you look back all the money you've paid in there over them years, you should be getting about $3,500, $4,000 a month to live on. You know, the government spends it all. That's terrible. Well, let's see. We went that way. What was all on the left? Nothing. Like I say, that Cully Walsh and her husband lived out there, and that was all alfalfa on that side.
Mm-hmm.
Liz?
She's okay.
Little stinker. On the left and on the right, it kind of boomed up. Two places out there, but not Farhar Welding, they finally built a shop. Let's see, come back down that way, of course, towards the depot. You know, I heard in that book I was telling you about, as well, where's the armory? You go down the street, and then you get on the right-hand street and go down to the next corner. There's a guy, what was his name, lives there now. That was the first flour mill in Craig.
Oh.
And, of course, they had a steam-type thing that made steam. And when they finally got that thing running and made steam, they had a whistle.
Mm-hmm.
When they blew that whistle, people thought the train was coming. But when it did come, in that book, there wasn't nothing out there on either side. The train come to town. There was people all over. How many ever people was in Craig when the first train made it to Craig?
Wow.
They thought that was the greatest thing in the world. That's what made Craig. But I suppose the car made after, Marshall Carr down here, that was his wife, of course. He had plans to go all the way to Salt Lake City. And they did stake it all the way to Salt Lake City. But old man Moffett ran out of money. They tell me what the problem was, too many tunnels between here and Denver. That's what broke him. All the money was going out and none was coming in.
Right.
And it's a slow process, getting them tunnels built till he got to Craig, and that's what broke him. But the railroad done pretty good, I'd say, when they brought pipe in here, groceries, and hauled wool and cattle and cow, whatever, out of here. That's kind of what made Craig for a long time. Going out that way on the right-hand side of the street, what the hell was out there? Nothing. There wasn't anything out there. But that ditch, that's got a lot of history, that old ditch, because that irrigated a lot of country. There were two brothers. They're both gone now. Big, tall fellas. They owned all that on the right-hand side. Clear out there. And then, of course, Waltz owned all this side. He was an old humpback guy, his wife, his Cully's husband. You'd see that old man out there day after day after day, irrigating. He would be up at daylight and never quit till dark, irrigating that alfalfa. 7 days a week. And she was a nice lady, but she was grumpy. That's about all I can tell you, folks.
No, thank you. Thanks for sharing all that.
I get to look at them pictures
Yeah.
and stuff. My.